Hello and welcome to the SMU Video Archive Series. In this series, we interview members of the SMU community who can provide insight into the history of SMU, especially from the perspective of their time at the university. I'm Pam Lang, and today we have with us Anne Early, Senior Lecturer Emeritus of English and Women's Studies. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Pam. It's good to be here.
Yeah. Now, I was thinking after I talked to you yesterday, thought we'd start off with asking you maybe a little bit about where you were brought up in your childhood and your dreams of being a teacher. Did you have dreams of that, or did that just happen?
Actually, I was brought up in Worcester, Massachusetts, and went to Clark University and then to Harvard for my master's degree. And I had several dreams. One of them was to be a nurse.
Oh, yes.
And I was strongly discouraged by my father. There were too many teachers in the family, I thought, but
Yeah.
I became one of them.
You became one.
And I've never regretted it. I have had a wonderful time and have taught for more than 40 years.
Wow, that's great. And you started out teaching up in the Northeast. And
I did.
We talked a little bit, and you said you really had not stopped teaching, even though you were a new
No,
mother.
I
And
hadn't. Jim and I were married in 1949, and I continued teaching. He was getting his doctorate at that point, and we had our first child, and fortunately I was able to continue teaching part-time. That was at New Haven College. And also in Poughkeepsie, I taught at Dutchess Community College. So that when we came to Dallas, we had 3 children.
Wow.
And when I started teaching at SMU, which was in 1966, our children were 4 and 8 and 11.
Oh, boy.
And it was good because 2 of them were in school all day, and our youngest, our daughter, was at what was called nursery school in those days.
Yes.
For the mornings that I taught. And SMU was very good to me in allowing me to teach at 9:30 and 11 on Tuesdays and Thursdays, which made all the difference, which made it possible.
Yeah, and it was
possible.
it was possible for you to do that. I know, because it's certainly difficult in any kind of situation with 2 people working to be able to take care of the children. But I've often thought that the academic couple has the perfect setup.
Well, that's true. I had a slight challenge when I was interviewed for the job by Ron Wetherington, who was directing the course I was going to teach in Nature of Man. I had made clear that I needed to teach on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and preferably at 9:30 and 11. Well, when the schedules came out, I was down for an 8 o'clock class.
Oh, no.
And you know, you just have to figure out what you care about. So I told him I couldn't do that.
No.
That I could just teach one course if they couldn't change that. And would you believe they changed it?
They did change it. Well, that was lucky for you. You
And
stuck.
it never changed back.
stuck to
so
your
that,
guns.
I was able always to feed the children and pack their lunches.
I know, but 8 o'clock
all
is
that-
not possible if you
No,
have children.
8 is not possible.
No, really not.
And then that other part of the accommodation, if I taught on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and Jim taught on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
Hey, wow.
So that if anyone was sick, we always had somebody who could be home with them.
And that was not, this was back in the 60s. Yeah. What kind of place was SMU? Was it a big culture shock to come to Texas from the Northeast?
Well, politically it was a
Yeah.
shock. It was a year after Kennedy had been assassinated, and Dallas was still suffering from people's misunderstanding in many ways of all
Right.
of that. But at SMU, it was wonderful.
Yeah.
The university had just devised a new curriculum plan, and this Nature of Man course was an interdisciplinary course that all first-year students had to take. Everybody. There
Everybody
were
took-
35 of us teaching it,
Wow.
and we ranged from full professors who chaired their departments in economics and psychology and anthropology to some
Yeah.
half-time
Adjunct
instructor
type,
like
yeah.
me, yes. But mostly they were tenured track people. And the course was amazing. It was designed for these students to really understand their world and themselves better. And we started out with DNA,
DNA, really? Yeah.
evolutionary theory, and just followed the whole development of humankind. through biology, we used an extraordinary book, Mankind Evolving by Dobzhansky, which was a challenge to all of us.
To read it, I remember. Yeah.
And then into anthropology with the different levels of society, from hunters and gatherers to industrial states, and read books, Ruth Benedict, The Patterns of Culture, and we did the Yanomamo another year and so on. And in psychology, an amazing text on Lives in Progress, which is just what the students' lives
That's
were,
right, they
Lives in
certainly are.
Progress.
Yeah.
And there were case studies of students their ages at Harvard, and this study had been going on for about 20 years at that point, so it was impressive with developmental theory and family interaction and expectations of parents and all of the emotional and intellectual and physical developments of people their age.
Yeah.
And it got into socialization, how
I remember that. Yeah.
each person is shaped by the particular society they're born into, and all the different people and institutions that shape them, from their parents to the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts and the churches and the schools. And beyond that, into ethics, aesthetics, political theory, economics. I really had to study in the
I'll bet you
economics.
did. I can remember teaching you some things, but I really had to. I was one day ahead of the class. That was about
Well,
it.
this was true for all of us in
Yeah.
that course, because nobody was an expert on all the things we taught. And the whole faculty in the course met every other Monday, and somebody
about
somebody who was an expert kind of
Well, that's
brought
great.
us up to date in terms of the particular aspect we were dealing with in the 2 weeks of that period. And that was a fabulous education and a real community builder.
That's wonderful. Now,
was-
who thought of this course in the first place?
Well, this was an outgrowth of that master plan.
the master plan,
that
right?
I think was finished in 63 or 60.
63.
Yes.
And so they.
And The Nature of Man and Discourse in Literature were
Right.
two
I remember
of the
discourse.
developments
I
of
taught that. It's discourse in
Yes.
literature. Yes.
And then in the Superior Studies
I
sections,
taught that also. Yeah.
so did I. After the first couple of years, I had 2 sections in that, and the students in those classes, they had the same members both in their Discourse in Literature and their Nature of Man class. They became like extended family
They
to
really
one another.
did. They were. It was really
it
wonderful.
was amazing. And they were smaller classes. There were never more than 35 in the Nature of Man. Sometimes in the Superior Studies there were only 20.
Right.
So that we had discussions and lectures and all kinds of.
Yeah, it was quite an exciting time,
Oh,
wasn't
it
it?
was
And it went
very
on. How long
exciting.
did this class last?
Well, it lasted about 10 years.
That's what I was
And
thinking.
then things began to change. In the first place, it became harder and harder to staff it, because publications and academic scholarship are the things that faculty are promoted on,
That's
given
right,
tenure
not-
for, and the demands in teaching a course this broad and the sort of work that has to be done to be able to teach it takes more time than most scholars really can give
Right.
to it if they're going to continue with their own scholarly work. So when that became evident, it changed.
Yeah, it's too bad, isn't it? That because it really was a wonderful course.
Oh, it
and
was a tremendous
I
course.
know when I started at SMU, the sense of community was really wonderful.
Yes.
And in the
Yes.
department and everywhere, and that kind of changed.
I had
guess
never experienced, since my
No.
undergraduate days at Clark, I had never
No.
experienced anything like that community.
Yeah.
It was beautiful.
It really was, and everybody was. Well, I guess that was a different time, kind of a
It
halcyon
was.
days. But it's nice that it did exist, and nice to remember it.
Yes.
Now, of course, the course was called Nature of Man. Did that ever come up for discussion?
That came up for
Yeah.
a good deal of discussion, and it came up for possible change. But some of the possibilities, the nature of being human,
Yeah, right.
all of
I know.
these were explored.
Yeah.
And it never was, it ended up for a while as a 1-semester course called Self and Society.
I don't remember that. Yeah.
But what did happen, given the presumptuousness, really, of the title,
Exactly. The nature of man.
was that we finally got 2 weeks in on women,
Aha.
and very good readings on the situation of women over time and the developing awareness of the lack of women and the lack of study of women in all academic courses. And this was at just about the time that women's studies was beginning. So that the nature of man and the nature of woman both came into play.
That was that, if I remember correctly, around the late 60s, or was that later than that
Well,
at SMU?
the real initiative for all of the consciousness raising and knowledge of women started with Women's Symposium in 1966.
That's right. That's what
which Emmy Bain had developed to celebrate the 50th anniversary of SMU's existence. Which, were you at that?
Yes, I was.
It
I mean,
was
it was incredible. Yes, it was. It
unbelievable.
was just unbelievable.
This cross section of
I was not
all
here
of
at that
those
time.
10 clubs you belonged
That's
to.
right, all the 10 clubs I belonged to. I managed to get to that. It wasn't too
All
far
of
away.
the women in organizations in Dallas were here.
Sure.
Some of them became mayors later. It was, it was
It was.
indeed a development of leadership, which was its major focus. And it made everyone so much more aware, and they also got to know one another, so that the networks that were created and the organizations that came out of it, and along with all the organizations that eventually developed from that, Women for Change and
Right,
the Rape
the-
Crisis Center, all kinds
all
of
of that,
things
and,
that,
you know, the different-
economic organizations, came women's studies. But women's studies started really with individual faculty members. Margaret Deschner in
That's right.
foreign languages taught a course on portraits of women in literature, and I think she taught it first at Perkins School of Theology.
I think so, yes, because John, her
And
husband was
then,
there.
then that became part of the general education curriculum for juniors. And Virginia Curry taught a course on
Right.
women in politics. She used to take the students to the national conventions when
That's
on
right.
the 4-year cycles. And Betty Maynard taught
That's
a
right.
course on women in society. And those three were the spearhead of women's studies. Then there was a commission on the status of women.
I remember
also.
that,
In
yes.
fact, Jim chaired that.
That's right.
So we were both involved, and I hadn't realized how long he'd been on the Women's Studies Council. He'd been on it for the first few years.
He was,
I may
yes.
have taken his place after he left. And the Women's Mission of the Methodist Church funded the exploration of the feasibility of having a women's studies program. And I thought that was marvelous.
That's amazing.
too.
It is, really.
So that when women's studies started at SMU, it was one of 50
In this.
universities in the country that had a women's studies program.
Now that's really remarkable,
yes,
isn't it?
we were
Because-
indeed pioneers. There's a funny dimension to that, though. The older, more established schools frequently didn't have women's studies courses for another 10 years.
Isn't
Harvard,
that something?
Yale,
Yeah, well, of course,
Princeton,
they're
so
even
on.
more canonical, I guess, or
Yes,
embedded in
exactly.
their traditions.
In their traditions, and in not having women at them
At,
until
not having women
then.
at all.
Yes, yes,
No,
yes.
at the schools, exactly, the Harvard and
The women
Yale.
started in the 70s, but well, a little earlier at Harvard, but they were Radcliffe.
Because I can remember people telling me, I think the women's and men's salaries were unequal. There were hardly any women professors at all, except for at the lowest level. And it was accepted that women didn't need as much of a salary as men
Yes,
because they
yes.
would have a husband to take care of them or someone, brother.
Well,
I don't know.
I know it
that was really the case.
notorious, some
Yes.
of the salaries. I heard of a woman in foreign language whose husband was a lawyer. She had a
Very low
very minimal salary
really-
because her husband obviously was taking care of the family, and that was the way
Well,
it
that
was
was,
seen.
and very well-meaning
women
people.
made their contributions. Yes. Do you remember when we all got together in the English common
yes.
room and
Shared
we all
our
told
salaries.
our salaries,
Yes.
which was unbelievable. People didn't think faculty would do this.
That's right, but we did. And I remember, I was on the Women's Faculty Caucus and
Yes.
saying, we want everyone to be equal. And I think even Marsh Terry said, are you sure you want that? Yes, we do. We want to be equal. He said, well, don't you understand? I said, no, I don't. And I was very... But I didn't, well, you know me.
Well-
but I think it's true that people truly didn't, they with all goodwill, that was the way it had been, and that was the way it was going to be.
Oh,
but we
it was-
we stood up for ourselves. I was
The
proud of that.
underlying suppositions were really questioned. Yes,
We did.
yes, and
we
challenged.
did, and that was, I
Yes.
guess, in the early '70s. When all of that happened.
And that fit in with women's studies, too.
Yes, it did.
Because I know Peggy McIntosh, who was the director of the Research Women's Center at Wellesley,
Right.
had a wonderful description of the way courses did or did not deal with women. And the first level was that they were womanless. Women didn't even get into them at all.
No, that's true.
And we'd all had plenty of those courses.
We certainly had. There
Lots of
wasn't.
presidents and generals.
That's right. And no.
Not even Florence Nightingale
No,
or Joan
not
of
even
Arc.
Betsy
maybe.
Ross. Nothing. It was
Well, Betsy Ross, maybe. not.
maybe, but not.
And that was the second level, where women who were in some ways like men in the power that they held, whether it was Queen Elizabeth or Joan of Arc or
Right.
made it into the courses. And then the third level was more women as problem. And the funny thing about this was the first women's studies course in history was done under the problems in American history.
How funny.
You know, they had rubrics for,
Right,
different kinds of courses, and they could vary from year to year what course was taught. And
The
that's
problems.
what women
Well,
was taught under the problems
yeah.
course in American history. But then it soon got its own place and was taught just as
Yeah.
women in American history. And the fourth level was really exploring the situation, the cultural situation of women and the history of women. And that's what most of the courses began doing. And the fifth level, according to Peggy McIntosh, was utopia,
Exactly. Everything is perfect.
where everything really was balanced and equally addressed. And I'm not sure that we've reached
I
that
don't think
level
so.
yet.
I mean, because there's all these backlashes or anger, and, you know. And having been kind of part of this, it's interesting to look back or see now that young women are still thinking, you know, Cinderella, I'll get married and I'll live
Yes.
happily ever after, and that is unfortunately something I guess we have to continue to work at. But no one's going to say, as someone said to me, who shall remain nameless, I really can't think of any good women authors in our own department.
I heard
Yeah.
that there was a Victorian literature course taught at one point that didn't have any of the outstanding women authors.
Well, you
Isn't
know,
that?
it is
Yes,
really.
But that was a long time ago. And those things I don't think would happen anymore.
I don't think so.
But it took extraordinary cooperation, and that was the whole focus of women's studies. Every single women's studies course that was offered was done with the approval of the department, that the faculty member taught the course in. So that in politics, it was women in politics. In American history, it was Judy Moraz's
Right.
Women in American History. It was Jim Hopkins's Women in Modern European History, Luis Martin in terms of women in Latin American history, and the same thing in psychology, in religious studies, in philosophy, in economics, in anthropology, in sociology, in English, all across the campus, in TV, in film, in public relations, down at the business school in terms of the structures of organizations and the effect on women. And then at one point in the early 80s, Felicia Schwartz, who headed Catalyst, approached Hans Hillebrand, who was the provost at that time, about SMU participating in an experimental offering of a two-career couple course that they were interested in seeing happen. And thanks to the business school, that was offered between organizational behavior and the women's studies program. And it was offered several times, and it got a great deal of national publicity because people were facing up to the problems. The irony was, one of our basic texts was taught by a couple who divorced after they'd written the book. So the trials and tribulations of the two-career couple, but the recognition of the need for flexibility in all these different aspects of it, different stages of career development and how they affect the marriage and the people's accomplishments were all part of the picture.
Well, that's a great, I guess I was one of my times when I was not here, so I wasn't aware of that. That's really a wonderful thing, because I think you don't realize, at least I didn't, I think I'm kind of backward, but how difficult it is to raise children and to have a career and to have a marriage, and it's so easy just for all that to fall apart. It takes more than I think we thought we could do. I think, I thought, well, I could do anything. Then we see, well, actually children are staying out all night or something. Some disaster is occurring that one hadn't foreseen.
Instead of sleeping from 8 at night until 8 in the morning, they were up. Yes, they get older. They do different things.
They do different things that take even more time and more worry, and it is difficult. And women, I think, now are realizing that more than I did or we did.
Well, some of the other things that happened in women's studies were intriguing. It started with those 3 courses, and extraordinary people involved in it from the beginning, with a council that was made up initially of 12 people and then was enlarged to 28 students and 12 faculty members. And that council approved women's studies courses, which also had to be approved by the schools in which they were offered in terms of the appropriate academic structure and accreditation. And in addition to fielding those courses, which increased from the initial 3 to more than 30 by 20 years later, and I'm sure it's over that at this point.
Probably, yeah.
And the enrollment in those courses went from about 200 initially to over 1,000 by the late 80s. That was helped because women's studies courses were taken into the distribution requirements, which really made them legitimate.
Sure.
And it also increased the enrollments, so that the kind of cooperation and the real nurturing that took place among faculty and within the administration, we started literally without a filing case. I can remember Judy Moraz coming to me with this carton.
That was her stuff, yeah.
And those were the files for women's studies. And we then got an office, and we got a filing cabinet. Now we have an office with a secretary.
Yeah, a secretary in a building.
And it's intriguing. And additionally, things were done through the Women's Studies Council to encourage more scholarship on women. And we used to have meetings where people would present their scholarly work, which were marvelous, and that still goes on. And there were research grants for faculty to do the research they needed to make additions about women in those courses, and there were any number of those awarded, which enlarged the treatment of women in the humanities general education courses and in some of the particular courses in departments. And another thing that happened was that an award was made in Margaretta Deschner's name after she retired for the outstanding faculty member in the treatment of women. And that came from student nominations and substantiation, and the award is given every other year still.
That's great. It really is a success story, isn't it?
To
hear you tell it, I mean, both the Nature of Man and the Women's Studies program at SMU are success stories of collegiality and actual achievement
and
in this university and dedication. And sometimes I think we need to focus on a little bit more at SMU, and because there are such very good things that have happened.
I should say so,
to say the least. About the students, they were very responsive. Do you think they've changed from back in the 60s till when you retired?
I taught only women's studies courses from 1976 until I retired in '93. So that I can't.
Yeah, you can't really.
I can't tell, because they were self-selective. The people who took women's studies wanted to take women's studies, and they tended to be interested and committed and willing to do the work, and they gained so much from it that they were excited by it. And
so you had the pick of you had the best.
I mean, they weren't always. They sometimes needed reading improvements and better study skills. But they were eager by and large, and that makes a big difference. If people know why they're taking something and that it is their choice and they want to be in that course.
And did you see any change, like any kind of backlash or any worries about being thought, a student thinking, well, I'm not a feminist, I'm just here because I have to take the course? Or
Well, and I think most of us, there was no question that we all were feminists, which is not very dangerous. It merely means that we believe in equal opportunity for men and women in all areas of society. But they found it threatening to be perceived as a feminist many times, whether they, and that wasn't the point of the course anyway,
No,
to make them
certainly
feminists.
not.
The point of the course was to make them more knowledgeable about women. And actually, the introductory course in women's studies, which is the one I taught most, was modeled on the nature of man.
Oh, yeah.
We did the same thing in it. It was a one-semester course, but we, instead of starting with biology, which women already knew about, we started with history. And once they understood the history and the way in which society had changed, the way in which conditions had changed, I mean, think of just the United States. When this country was new, 95% of the people who lived in it lived on farms. And no farm is a good farm without a woman.
That's true. That's
I
a
mean,
lot of work.
They were two career couples,
Absolutely.
those farmers, the husband and the wife. So that change to 2% of the American population being on farms, maybe less than that now, and the Industrial Revolution, the change in educational opportunities, the change in the workplace, the change in life expectancy, everything that contributed. And another thing that was usually not understood by, I would say, the majority of the population, was that the changes for women didn't really come about because women were banging down the doors, so much as that the economy needed the abilities and the energy and the work of women, and they were out recruiting women for the jobs that had to be filled. It started significantly, certainly in World War II.
Exactly.
It went back after the war, but it resumed then during the 60s, and it's gone steadily up all of these years since.
Yeah, so follow the money. In other words, it's an economic.
It was the market economy, getting the workers it needed, and the labor pool that had been tapped least was the women, and that became the labor pool that was tapped.
And also the women as as consumers as well. I mean, they're very powerful, and I think once you recognize that, that's maybe not the best way to be looked at, but an important thing.
Well, it's a power.
It's a power. It's a big power. I can remember when I started to get interested in women's literature, women's accomplishments, that there were so many. It's so fascinating because there's so many things that just never came to light. You know, nobody knows about them. Women's art, artists, women writers, they were just lost. They were just buried. It's as if they didn't exist. And they were terrific and wonderful.
Here we had on campus Eleanor Tufts, who
exactly,
wrote a
Eleanor
book
Tufts,
on women artists and taught a course on women artists, and Tom Moore in religious studies, who taught a course on women, myth, and society, and then went on to the care of the soul that became
that's right. That's
nationally known.
Yes, I've interviewed him too.
Yes,
yeah, that's true. And the goddess and all of that was very popular.
It's fascinating.
It is so fascinating, and if you look at education as a lifelong occupation, you can never be bored because there's so much that nobody knows about yet, and you're always finding more and more and more. And I have to say I'm grateful to SMU for that, for igniting. I mean, I'm always that way in a way, but just igniting that spark and thinking I can do that. And look at this. Here are all these people, and then saying, "Hey, you men, yes, we're going to have equal salaries. We're going to do this and that." I don't know if you remember Women's Day '75.
I do.
Yes.
I do.
Bella Abzug came and we all marched around. And,
Yes.
you know, that was quite
Yes.
quite
And she had been here for Women's Symposium.
That's
too.
right, she
I mean,
had, yeah.
Margaret Mead. It's just tremendous.
It
the
really
women who
is.
had been here over the years.
Gloria Steinem, I know,
Yes,
came. That
several
was a big,
times.
yes, the first time, I guess, was in the late 60s, and that was very eye-opening to me. I thought,
They had to set up an extra room
That's
with
right.
a TV to take care of the people who wanted to see her.
yeah. Have you? Do you still do any work in
I still work.
I mean, yeah, you still work. I mean, are you still interested? You still obviously.
I'm not teaching.
You're not teaching, but you're still doing research and looking. What are you working on?
Well, actually, what I've been working on most recently is The Tempest.
Oh, really? Oh, well, that's a little switch.
Where is your mother, Miranda?
Yeah.
But no, I'm into several things, but I'm not a scholar. I am a teacher.
Well, that's what I say too.
I'm
not. Yeah, I love to learn.
And I never thought of myself as a scholar or showed any scholarly traits.
Well, I certainly didn't
other
either. I
than
can't
my
sit still
excitement
very
in
well.
learning. I love to learn.
Yeah, I do too.
And that, and I love to teach. And between the two, SMU had just been a wonderful, wonderful place to be.
Yeah, it is, and it's kind of sad when. Well, I mean, the research and scholarship is wonderful too, and I envy those that do it. Not really envy them, but I appreciate those that do it. But it's kind of too bad that they can't. Well, they do allow, you know, or people do teach and learn and share what they have, but there's so much emphasis on publication. And do you think that will ever change, or is that just going to be?
I don't know, because if that, it's a tough call, because if that isn't done in the universities,
Where else?
Where is it going to be done? And I don't know. You mentioned the students earlier.
Yeah.
I am just so overjoyed at the kinds of things that the students I have had at SMU have gone out in the world to do.
Well, tell us about.
Well, one of them is a professor at Southwestern School of Medicine.
Wow.
Another one who was in another one of those superior studies classes is a renowned biological researcher in Switzerland. Any number of the women are in law and medicine and politics. It's just teachers, the best teachers.
Yeah, the best teachers, the best teachers.
It's tremendous, and they were good students. I can't ever remember resistance, questioning, but not resistance to learning. And I like questioning.
Yeah, you need. I
I'm
think.
fine with questioning. Resistance, I have troubles with. I think it's always good to know. What you do with it is up to you. But the more you know, the better off you are, and the choices you make.
And I guess teaching in the women's studies, it's so new to so many people. They really don't know that, so it can excite students.
The interesting thing in the women's studies was the number of men who took it. And what intrigued me over the years was the reasons why the men took it. And for many of them, it was that they had extraordinary women as mothers. I can remember one fellow's mother was a dentist, and another fellow's mother was a lawyer, and another fellow's mother was in real estate. Another one's mother, I think he had 8 brothers and sisters.
Oh, wow.
So she had 9 children. And after they reached an age, she opened up her own shop and became a very successful businesswoman. And this had nothing to do with politics. It had to do with their personal lives. He was from a very conservative family, but it was recognizing people's abilities, their interests, and their capacity to do things in the world that intrigued them.
Yeah, I think that's when you say that, I think it's important to appreciate the importance of being a mother like that, being a kind of a role model in a way. I know, like my mother and my grandmother too. You know, looking back, I mean, they didn't work. I mean, mother is a teacher, but I mean, they did. I mean, they did work. Of course, they did.
All women have
use that
always
cliche. Very hard. They did, but they were strong. You know, they were,
yes,
and they were.
Yes, so were mine, Pam.
Yeah, and you know that was very important, and also gave me the belief I could do anything I tried, which was not always the case. I was lucky in
Yes, yes. That you
respect.
both had the ability and you had the confidence.
Yeah, and never let me, yes, I can do that, of course.
And you did. You did.
Yeah. Well, I did, up to a point. We have to work with our personalities, I guess. But
Yes.
as given that, I'm proud of that. I'm proud of SMU. And when you think of good teaching, I think SMU has some really wonderful teachers.
Yes, yes.
Really does, and all.
And
Scholars.
one of the things I thought of too in relation to women's studies was the tremendous cooperation of people in administration.
Mm-hmm.
Back in the middle 80s, we had Peggy McIntosh from the
Right.
Wellesley Center here, as well as Elizabeth Tidwell. They were
Yeah.
here the same part of 1 week. And the provost office had a dinner for any number of faculty and department chairs in honor of Peggy McIntosh. And the dean had a lunch.
Great.
Hal Williams was dean then for Elizabeth Tidwell, and any number of department chairs, because she was a woman who was both an MD and seriously involved in religion. I'm not sure whether she hasn't become an Episcopal priest by now.
Yeah, I'm not sure
I
either.
think, and
Maybe
she had done extraordinary work on the nature of women's education as a Mount Holyoke graduate. She found that particularly significant, that women needed to be in climates that were encouraging,
Right. Yeah.
reinforcing.
And that's I think important too. I know my aunt was a Mount Holyoke graduate, and it depended on what my grandfather's business, where the children went to school. She was in a flush time.
Yes.
But it's important to be in an educational environment where women are supported, where they find out about things that other women have done, not just men, although that's important too.
Well, I had a funny experience that way, because when I was an undergraduate at Clark, I was in the first class of women. It had been an
were you?
all-male
Yeah.
university first, and then university and college. And the night before Pearl Harbor, the Board of Trustees voted to admit women the next
that was a
fall,
good
and
thought.
I was in that class. Well, it was a small liberal arts school in Worcester. We were 302 undergraduates in my first year, and all but 25 of the men left at the end of that first year, and there were only about there were 50 of us in that first class, so there might have been 75 women altogether in the school. And it was up to the women to keep the campus newspaper, the yearbook, the debating society, the interfaith society, everything that had to keep going was our responsibility, and
you did? So
we
that
did
was
it.
great.
Exactly.
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
Tilly the Toiler, but not in the academic setting. Yeah.
It was an intriguing experience. We didn't realize at the time the
No,
significance
you don't
it
realize
meant to
that,
us, but they were a group of women.
Yeah, I bet they were. You know, that
Yes.
reminds me of my high school, which was in New York City, well, in Staten Island, the Newdorp High School. But it was, the principal was Miss McGinnis, and then the dean of women was Hertha B. Winch. And anyone who was in an academic program, we were not allowed to have any study. We had to take all these classes, and she just insisted. And it was important that we do that. You know, I'm just thinking back when you say that. I mean, all these women who are graduates of St. Joseph's College for Women in Brooklyn came there and taught, and they were excellent. You know, it was really a good school because of these women who were.
Oh, well, that was true
Right.
throughout the school system
Exactly.
in the country. That's our big loss, is that there are so many more opportunities for women, that then there aren't the same women going into teaching.
But you had that choice of nurse too. That was me also. But I realized it was such a good idea.
Yes, I had much more fun with what went into people's heads than what came out of their bodies.
I know. We're glad of that, aren't we? What do you see as the future of women's studies? Will it ever get where it'll all be assimilated? There won't be women. I mean, because I know in the English department there were actually, believe it or not, 2 seminars focusing on women for the spring semester, and a certain person said, well, how awful, I couldn't, what about the canon, what about Milton, blah, 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 and they said, well, it's okay, why not? And that's amazing, knowing our department, that there would be 2 women's studies classes in seminars, and they kept them. I think they changed the title of one, but they kept it as it is. Do you think it will ever be totally integrated into
Well,
that?
ultimately, that's what one hopes for. And there is a move going on across the country
what I
for
thought.
many women's studies programs now to be called gender studies, which is another thing altogether. And I have not yet become sympathetic with that because I do not feel that knowledge about women has yet become sufficiently widespread, and that there still needs to be a particular focus on women.
Yeah,
But I think there's no question there will be change, and what form it'll take and where it will start, or if it's already started. It may have already started in terms of this gender studies focus on the assumption that women and men are equitably treated in other courses.
Well,
That
I-
depends on the
that
perceiver.
depends. That's exactly depend. It's almost like affirmative action.
Yes,
Oh, it's all
yes.
over. Everything's fine. We don't need. But unfortunately, it's not. There's so these things are so deeply entrenched. These perspectives
Yes.
in our culture that I think it's necessary to have pointed at things. Pointed out about women's history, women's accomplishments. The same with any other. Gender.
Yes.
I can remember learning about social history. It's important to know what everyone's thought, not just the generals. And history does not have to just
history
be wars
of ideas as well
yeah.
as the history of movements.
history of textiles and history of all these things. There's just so much to that we not necessarily lost, but it just needs to be brought to people's attention.
We need to know.
Yeah, we
Needs to be alive.
Exactly, exactly. Your husband Jim Early has been a dean. He's been a professor in the English department. Was it at all difficult to work at the same university with Jim?
No.
I doubt it would be. No, but I just said.
I was anxious about it, and there always was not pressure from Jim, but pressure from myself, never to do anything that would in any way
Cause him grief. Yeah.
cause him grief or, not measure up somehow. So that was always an impetus to do as well as I could. But no, if there were any pressures, it was juggling all of it. But it also had all kinds of shared friends and colleagues and interests and activities, whether it was lectures or social activities, and that was just reinforced beautifully by both being in the same place.
Yeah, and Jim, of course, is a scholar.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, a
He
true
is.
scholar.
He is a real scholar.
He's a real scholar,
Oh,
and
he is. He
he
is.
was. I've had
He's
him as
just
a
finishing
teacher for many.
finishing up on another book.
Yes, I've seen him working on it, and I can still remember taking Jim's class in Dallas Hall before the air conditioning. I think we were in some kind of former men's room or something. Our class with this ancient table, and
Yes.
he was talking about the Henry James novel and talking about the facade. How he loves architecture, and I
Yes.
still remember so well all of the. He's such a good teacher.
Yes.
And but a true scholar, and
Yes.
was very inspirational. Though I was lucky
Good. Good.
to have met him when we first. And it's hard to believe that Dallas Hall was once not air conditioned.
Oh, not only was it not air conditioned, but they were building Heroi
Oh.
behind us, so there was all this construction. The windows had to be open, and I can remember one day I was in one of those corner rooms, a lovely room with light coming in on two sides and beautiful trees outside, and that was when I wore higher heels, not very high, but my heel went through the rotting planks in the wooden floor, and I managed to get it out without falling.
Yeah.
But it was good that they fixed Dallas Hall. That was just as it
just
was being
needed
closed
to be done. Yes.
for renovation.
Yeah,
And
because I
remember then we were all on the top
the
floor
top
of the
of the
library.
library, right.
Mhm.
And so
in
there-
those open
the carols.
office arrangements.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Because I can remember. I mean, I was just kind of starting out then, I guess, at that time, and having to go up to the top floor of in the carols, and
Yes.
then there's been so many changes. I guess
Yes.
in the years that you taught at SMU to the physical plant,
Yes.
and all to the good.
Well, even more though, I'm sure, in terms of other people and who were here.
Before that, yeah.
Yes, during the 40s or the 50s, because the construction during the 50s must have been enormous.
Right. I mean,
When did you come to Dallas?
Well, we came to Dallas in 1963, and then I started at SMU in '68. I think I was saying. So that must have been right around the next year or so that they redid
Dallas
Hall.
Hall.
Dallas Hall. It was in that period when I was just starting out. But I do remember, when it was not air conditioned. That had to be that year. What do you see the future of SMU? Do you see it as getting to be one of those benchmark I don't know if like Duke, or do you see it as the Harvard of the South, or as a very good university kind of as it was, or do you see it growing bigger?
I think there's no question that SMU has improved over these decades.
Yeah, I think so too.
Academically it is much stronger, and the resources are greater. And then the question is, are there going to be resources for that kind of expansion in the future? And I don't have any prophetic visions.
I don't either. I know.
I have great hope for SMU, and I think it's a wonderful school. All three of our children have SMU degrees in one way or another. They've all benefited and enjoyed their time here, so it's been a family experience.
It certainly has. It has, and I think when you look, I mean, it doesn't have that long a history compared to the older universities in the East.
It was only 50 when we arrived.
That's right, and it doesn't have the endowment, but I think that's building up. I mean, this latest
the endowment went through a huge increase at one stage, certainly, and it's done well recently.
And the capital campaign is really, and of course, the stock market keeps going. You never know what will.
It went up today.
Yeah, good. I'm glad it wasn't so good yesterday.
That was the news on, and it came up. Not changed by now.
Now that we have all these investments, when Jack retired, we have a little.
Of being responsible for yourself.
Yeah. You said your children have SMU degrees, and that was another benefit, wasn't it?
Well,
we had
the undergraduate.
Undergraduate, but
undergraduate degrees were, and two of them have between them 3 graduate degrees. So those we had to pay for.
You had to pay for. Oh well.
It was a pleasure.
Have you seen changes in the city too? I know, obviously.
Enormous changes in the city, just enormous, and all essentially for enrichment in many ways. There's no question there's more pollution, but there's also.
It's a much more diversity. There's so much more to do. I remember when we first arrived, it was so conservative. It was so, it was just before the Kennedy assassination, the year before, and that was a big shock. But I can remember the culture shock moving here. To Dallas from New York.
Different.
And it was very different. But it's been a very good place for us. Dallas and the university too. Now that I've returned, my first love teaching, which is good.
Yes.
Do you see? Do you see a change in, say, the humanities? There's been now people want computer degrees or engineering or whatever. And people say, well, we don't, Dedman College, what can I do with a degree in English or history?
Well, I think that's been going on for a long time, Pam. At every single commencement, people just go, when the business school
that's right. So huge,
candidates stand up. And how that expectation that because having more education leads to better jobs has to mean that the education itself is directed specifically to those jobs, when it doesn't need to be.
No, I wish I could
but it's
impart
riskier.
that to students.
It's riskier, although I think it's risky both ways. Certainly there have been any number of extremely capable students who majored in things like journalism and business who didn't land in positions that were the quality, interesting kind of jobs that their ability would have led them to. But they may well work up to them, which is part of life too.
Yeah, they may. And I think I wish I could. I try to tell my students, and I don't want to get in trouble with the business school, but get your education in the humanities first, and believe it or not, you'll be able to do those jobs.
Exactly.
You just need to go there and get one, and you can do it. You don't have to do that, or get an MBA if you feel like you really want to get into business and make money.
Yes, and most of the workforce that they will be in tends to train them for the particular kinds of work they're going to be doing anyway.
So
the capacity to learn that's important.
Right, and I guess looking back, I mean, I've never wanted to do anything but English or something to do with reading or books. It's always been, ever since I was a very small child. That's just been there wasn't any other choice for me. Something to do with writing or whatever, or teaching or something like that. But for so many people, they just want to make money. I like that too, but.
That's interesting. In all the years that I asked students what their goals were, I think I only had two who said they wanted to be really rich.
Really rich. Well, yeah.
Others seemed to have more specific goals in terms of areas of interest and possibilities there. And I was fascinated that some of them thought that way because it's so foreign to anyone who teaches.
That's true.
But the other was that there were so few of them. Really,
that really just wanted to get rich. I guess
that focused on the wealth dimension rather than the satisfaction and the.
Yeah.
I don't know how much that's changed. I have been retired now for 7 years.
Well, I think it's probably I have a lot of students that seem to be headed toward careers where their parents are pushing them toward careers where they will make a lot of money. And that's kind of sad sometimes. Some of them really don't want that. But that's the way they feel, at least when they first come, when they're freshmen. They seem to have that feeling, well, I'm going to major in business, and Daddy wants me to. And some of them are, well, I teach the ESL students now, so maybe it's that. But they just seem to have that as their ambition. I mean, they're
that's seen as the opportunity major.
Exactly. I mean, that's what they should be doing, so I try to talk them out of it. But it's also been rewarding for me to see so many girls now majoring in engineering and math and computer science, and even though that was certainly not possible for me.
And you didn't want it.
I didn't want it.
You wouldn't want it.
No, I wouldn't. Just not my thing. It wasn't anything to do with being a woman. I don't think it was just that wasn't my thing. But there's just so many of them.
Yes.
Biology, science, and amazingly.
The options are enormous.
Yeah, it's really like a whole different world. We just hope it doesn't implode or go backwards. That worries me.
Do.
It's so easy. So easy.
Well, it's lasted pretty well so far.
Yeah, I think so.
We have to live in hope.
We have to live in hope. If you were going to sum up your career at SMU, could you make kind of a statement about? Your interview has been wonderful, but we're kind of coming to the end, and if you could just kind of sum up the best things or the worst things, kind of little parting statement.
Well, I think it was a tremendous gift to me, and I certainly did all I could to help educate others, and in the process, I was enormously educated myself by all the things I had to learn to be able to do what I was involved in.
Well,
and open to the change and the growth and the community, which was tremendous.
Yeah, well, that's I think that's true. It's a good place. It's been a wonderful place for me. I mean, I'm not interviewing myself, but it has been a wonderful. Looking back, despite I guess some hard times in the university for different reasons, it's been a wonderful place to be, to have friends who care about each other, colleagues who, as you say, in all these different departments that would work together to bring together the Women's Studies Department and all of the things you've talked about, the Nature of Man course. I think it's a really a great thing to say about SMU, that these things happened here.
And there's an openness that is of an open mind and an open heart and an open possibility for the students as well as for the
That's why it's a good
university.
place, because nobody said, try to intimidate you, say you couldn't do it. They say you can, and all the things I did when I was a young woman. I mean, I was the president of the Women's Faculty Caucus. That was ridiculous. But I mean, I didn't have any. But I could do that. I could teach humanities, which I had never. Didn't know how. I mean, we just did it a day ahead or whatever. All those opportunities
Don't
we
put it
had.
that way. You worked hard.
Oh, I
to
did
learn
work
all
hard,
you
but I mean,
needed
it
to
was
do.
it was great that I had that opportunity. I'm glad I was
Yes.
here at that time when that was open to me.
Well, the Public Relations Office better get a hold of us.
That's right. Well, they better get our tape. We're being pretty good. I'm not. Well, it's just been great. It's been an honor to
It's
visit with you
been
and
fun
to
visiting with you, Pat.
have the perspective of your life and your career, and to we hope it keep going and produce some great books and whatever. We'll have a great time.
We'll do what we can.
That's right.
Thank
you so much.
I've enjoyed it.